The Venture X card from Capital One gives you more of what you love, like premium travel benefits and access to Taylor Swift tickets. Oh, I do love her. Earn 5 times miles on flights and 10 times miles on hotels through Capital One Travel.
Enjoy your stay in Suite 13.
Whoa, 13? That's Taylor's lucky number. Plus, get access to Taylor Swift The Eras Tour, presented by Capital One. Maybe I'll see you there. The Venture X card from Capital One. What's in your wallet?
Terms apply. See CapitalOne.com for details.
Whether it's Kroger Simple Truth Turkey or mac and cheese with Murray's English Cheddar or pie made with fresh Cosmic Crisp apples, there are many dishes we look forward to sharing during the holidays. And Kroger has all the fresh ingredients you need to turn today's holidays into tomorrow's memories. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Hey guys, it's Ali. Welcome back to Infertile, the podcast. This is episode 200. Holy shit, 200. And it's called Blair. Today's episode is sponsored by Prove, a women's health company dedicated to providing information and solutions on key fertility hormones so they can reach their goals faster. Prove founder Amy Beckley, PhD, invented the first and only FDA-cleared PDG test after her own battle with infertility. When she learned that her 7 miscarriages and 2 rounds of IVF could have been prevented by an inexpensive progesterone supplement, she set out to help other women better understand the success of their ovulation from home. Prove's newest kit, Complete, allows women to measure all 4 key cycle hormones that impact conception from the comfort of home so they can get pregnant faster. With just one test kit, you can better understand ovarian reserve, identify up to 6 fertile days, and check for successful ovulation. And now the free Prove Insight app takes your hormone knowledge one step further by providing numeric hormone levels, info about what they mean, and personalized action plans to help you reach your fertility goals faster. That's not all, guys. Prove also offers an entire suite of at-home hormone tests and hormone-supporting products to empower you with the right information on your journey. Okay, so you know I love female-founded companies and products that can truly benefit anybody battling infertility. So definitely check out Prove. It's spelled P-R-O-O-V. You can go to provetest.com, P-R-O-O-V-T-E-S-T.com, and you can enter the code ALI25 and you'll get 25% off your first Prove order of $25 or more. Again, Infertile AF listeners are getting a special discount code, so go to provetest.com, P-R-O-O-V-T-E-S-T.com, enter the code ALI25, A-L-I-25, and you'll get 25% off your first Prove order of $25 or more. Thanks, Prove. This episode is supported by Receptiva DX. The Receptiva DX test can help couples struggling with unexplained infertility. Getting pregnant isn't easy, as so many of you know. Many couples struggle with infertility, and unexplained infertility can be particularly frustrating. Women facing unsuccessful IVF may not know that endometriosis is the underlying cause, a disease that can impact the success rates of IVF treatments and often has no symptoms. The Receptiva DX test can help identify endometriosis before an embryo transfer, and it has the potential to save women the stress, anxiety, and cost of multiple failed IVF attempts. The good news is, multiple studies show treatment of women with a positive Receptiva DX test improves live birth outcomes by over 50%. Receptiva DX can detect all stages of endometriosis and help women make better decisions in planning for pregnancy. You can learn more at receptivadx.com or download their app, which is also called Receptiva DX. Okay, guys, I'm so excited and honored for you to hear this conversation today. So as many of you know, Blair Nelson is my business partner. She and I co-founded Fertility Rally in June of 2020, and we've been working together ever since. But we first met through my podcast, and then I was on her podcast when she launched her podcast. So she was on my 8th episode. You'll hear us talking about this in the beginning of the show. And we became friends. We started texting. We started talking about how incredible this infertility community is. And then it all kind of organically led to Fertility Rally. So that's the very, very nutshell version of it. But I was thinking about who I wanted to have on my 200th episode. I had Vince on my 100th episode, which I thought was awesome because he got to tell his side of the story of our fertility journey. And I thought, duh, have Blair, because not only can she pick up where she left off from episode 8 and talk about her fertility journey, but we can also just have fun, shoot the shit, talk about Fertility Rally, and talk about other stuff too. So we decided that she was going to be my 200th guest. And then, as you guys know, if you follow her on Fab IVF Mama, her current pregnancy took a turn for the worst, and you'll hear all about that. So before, I just want to clarify that she was going to be on the show before all of this stuff, but then she agreed that she still wanted to do it, which I commend her for, because I thought, oh gosh, she's not going to, it's so raw and it's so new. She's not going to want to talk about all this shit yet, but in typical Blair fashion, she's so strong, and she was like, I want to do it. Let's do it. And she really wanted to talk about everything and share it all with you. So that's what happened. It's an incredible conversation. If I do say so, she's just the best. And without further ado, this is Blair's infertility story. Well, hello.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm okay.
Loaded question. So, okay, we have so much to talk about. The last time we did a podcast episode, it came out in May of 2019. So 3.5 years ago, we recorded it a couple weeks before that. So much has happened. It's so funny, Blair, like listening to our first ever phone conversation that's recorded, because we don't really know each other that well. And we're like, it was good. I mean, but I was like, I feel like we're going to be friends for life. And we got a lot. I was like, you should come visit me in Brooklyn. And it was just funny to hear it all kicking off. And since then, we've probably literally spent thousands of hours on Zoom calls and phone calls and all that stuff.
For sure. And I have indeed come to visit you.
I know. Yes. And I've come to visit you in Austin too. So everybody probably knows, who's listening to this, that we are business partners now, and we started Fertility Rally together. So before we get back into your story, because I will say where we left off with your interview, you were just about to start your second retrieval. So this is pretty early in your process, that 3.5 years ago. And a lot has happened since then, fertility wise, and you've had Hadley and, all that stuff. So, but before we get into that, let's just talk about Fertility Rally a little bit.
Okay.
Do you remember when we first thought of it?
I kind of do. I feel like we were texting. I was trying to remember the other day why and when we exchanged phone numbers and started texting regularly. But it was definitely some time had passed since I was on your show and you were on my show.
Mm-hmm.
And so I don't exactly remember what happened, but we were texting, and I think one of us said something, you probably remember better than me, but I feel like one of us said something like, oh, I really want to do an in-person meetup to bring everybody together. And then the other person said, oh my gosh, I want to do that too. And I feel like we're like, well, let's do it.
Yeah. That is what happened. I remember it because I still lived in Brooklyn at the time. And I remember it was we did this late night texting. And I think that we had exchanged numbers because we were going to do a cross promotion or a giveaway or something, or an Instagram takeover of each other's page.
Okay.
So I think we did something like that. And then we started texting. And then as you know, once we get the ball rolling, or even in the early days, just brainstorming, the texts were blah, 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 rapid fire and all these ideas. And all of a sudden we had started Fertility Rally, which is wild. We launched it. Go ahead.
I feel like those days where we were doing, we still do Instagram takeovers sometimes, but I feel like I didn't know anything about social media back then. And I just thought it was the biggest deal that we were going to switch accounts.
Yeah.
And do takeover.
I'm you're going to give me your password? Okay. I won't tell anybody. It was a big deal. What's also funny is you had your blog at the time, and I kept mentioning your blog Fab Fertility, which is funny because that also seems like a million years ago. So, okay. So yeah, we started Fertility Rally in June of 2020. Just kind of thinking that it was going to be well, before we pivoted to the online aspect, we were going to do this event in Brooklyn, but the world shut down. So we had to not do that. But it's just crazy now. We've got almost 500 members of Fertility Rally.
Yeah.
We've had, a handful of IRL events. We're talking about having another one early next year, which is going to be awesome. It's just, every single Wednesday night, you and I have been on these support group calls with our, different rally members every week, but averaging like 50 to 60. And then now we have other support groups throughout the week. Like, it's wild how it's all like, it seems like it's happened so fast, but it also seems like we've been doing this for a long time. Like, it's that weird like dichotomy.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I don't know, when we started it in the middle of the pandemic, I feel like we both had a ton of time to dedicate to Fertility Rally because we're working from home. Your kids were at home.
Mm-hmm.
I was pregnant at the time, right? Or was I about to be?
You
I was
weren't
about to be pregnant
yet. Yeah.
with Hadley.
Yep.
And anyway, what's crazy is that we have less and less time, and it's gotten more and more involved and bigger. So,
I know.
the craziest part about it, I feel like, has been expanding our services, growing with our membership, and then also growing our team, which has been really fun because for anybody listening that's a Rally member who follows either one of us closely, we have several people that help us out with Fertility Rally because we definitely can't do it by ourselves. But we've gone through a huge learning curve with web developers, which is a story for a different day.
Oh my God.
Unless I need to play the voicemail on the podcast. I'm just kidding.
Oh my God. Do you have it?
I think I have it.
Well, speaking of like litigious people, I don't know. Maybe we shouldn't.
Yeah, we got it. Let's just say we got an SOS call from our first web developer in a desperate state. It was very alarming. Anyway, we have since got more profesh with our web developers, and we've hired from within our Rally family for special projects and also for help with support groups. And then we've just reached out to our network from Instagram, honestly, connections we've made through our various events and just friendships we've made and podcast guests we've had to help us run this thing, because it's just grown in a way that we definitely wanted, but weren't expecting. And it's nowhere near where we want it to be.
No, I feel like we've barely even scratched the surface. And like, we're talking about starting this men's group early next year in 2023. And I feel like the possibilities are so endless. Like, it's exciting, but it's also like, holy shit, this is like so much bigger.
We started doing, so we have 4 support groups a week, most weeks, 3. And then we also have, we started doing corporate events, whether it be for, women's interest groups or just HR groups or part of wellness programs or what have you. And that's been really fun. And that's been something that you and I have really loved and want to grow. But it's just like, where's the time? So
exactly
in 2023, there will be the time for that.
Yeah, we'll figure it all out. It's all happening. But
so if anyone wants an HR presentation from Fertility Rally, email us.
Yeah, we can do a lunchtime educational thing or after work or whatever. Those have honestly, I love doing those calls with you. I feel like we've gotten like I don't know. I feel like I've known you forever, and like on a call together, I feel like we can play really well off of each other. And like, we just both are so passionate about this. It's like effortless almost, like once we get the ball rolling.
Well, I think it's super fun because it's just really, I don't know. I like those personally. I don't know what your reasons are for liking them, but I like those little lunch and learn, which is such a weird way to say it, or like seminar or whatever. I like them because we get to answer questions in real time, but we also get to help the companies like get more with it in terms of their coverage in some instances. And then in other instances, like just creating a safe space to answer questions about all things reproduction that people don't feel comfortable asking and never have an opportunity to ask because they're not in a membership like Fertility Rally, because maybe they're not there yet.
Yeah.
So it's just the broader education piece for me, which I love.
Yeah, exactly. So I guess we should say thank you to everybody who's, all of our members of Fertility Rally and just everybody who's been involved in our, we've done 5 Fertility Rally lives so far. We've got our 6th one coming up in April. We've already got some people on the docket for that. So, it's like, it literally does take a village to like do this. And we always say we're nothing without our members. So it's just been, my God, this is like the most amazing work for me, like fulfilling wise. Like I never thought I would be in this space. It's like, it all happened so organically, and I always say like, there's nobody I'd want to do it aside from you. Like, I don't know. I feel like we like hit the jackpot, or at least I feel like with you,
well,
like
it's
I'm
like
not fishing for,
I don't think I ever thought when I grow up, I want to have a podcast and a membership for people struggling and having super dark day. You know what I mean? It's just like such an interesting way to end up where we ended up. But and also we have to thank our members, but also the listeners of this podcast and of my podcast when it was active, because so many of you have become members of Fertility Rally, and then also of course, so true. Your friends.
So true. And I've said this before too, but in case people don't know, the way that we met is you wrote me an email and you're like, your quote was, "My husband and I have been through a fuck ton of shit." And I was like, "Ooh, I like this girl."
And guess what? That hasn't changed.
Yes. Okay. So let's go back to your story. So when we last spoke, again, it was May 2019, you were about to start your second retrieval. So do you want to pick it up from there and tell us what has happened since then? I know it's a lot. So, as little or as much detail, obviously, as you want to give.
Yeah. Well, there's not really much detail to the second, third, and fourth retrievals because nothing happened. We went through, the process of all the medications, the stem cycles, the retrievals, the recovery, the testing, the genetic testing, the waiting, all for second, third, and fourth retrieval to have 0 normal embryos. So I think between those 3 rounds of IVF, we sent off only a total of, I want to say 8 or less embryos amongst 3 retrieval rounds, which is not a lot. Well, I should say I do not suffer from diminished ovarian reserve. So we always get a lot of eggs, like in the 20s every time. The reason we don't make a lot of embryos is because of my husband's diagnosis, which if you want the whole backstory of that, listen to my first interview with Ali. But he has a balanced translocation. So I guess you could consider that male factor, but really it's a genetic issue with my husband. So, or chromosomal, whatever you want to say. So anyway, we just had really, really bad luck, or I guess statistics weren't working in our favor. I hate when people say bad luck because I feel like there's always an answer. But the statistics were not in our favor for those rounds of IVF. After the second round of IVF, so we did from our first round, we got 4 genetically normal embryos. 3 of those transfers just completely failed. 1 ended in an early miscarriage. That was with 1 doctor at 1 clinic. We followed our doctor to a second clinic because she made a move. And that was the second round of IVF that failed. We didn't like the clinic at all, adored her. And I don't think she ended up not liking the clinic because she has now gone on to start her own clinic in Austin.
Right.
But it was just a perfect storm of the failed round, not liking the clinic, and just really feeling very uncertain and unstable at the clinic, where I feel like that should be the one thing that makes you feel stable and secure. And so we ended up switching clinics between our second and third round of IVF, and love our clinic that we're with now. We did the third and fourth rounds of IVF there. And then after the 4th round, I don't even remember what month and year that was in, but I just remember being like, it was right around, I think it was February of 2020, honestly, January or February. And I just remember being like, well, shit, what do we do? I mean, we were in a desperate, what felt like such a desperate situation. Everyone listening that goes through IVF or any sort of infertility knows that it's so expensive. We have no coverage.
God, yes.
And so we're like, all right, we're almost 6 figures into this thing with nothing to show for it. And we're back at square one. So is it time to throw a Hail Mary and, go to the holy grail of all IVF labs, which, and to me, in my mind in education, was CCRM in Denver, because that lab invented genetic testing. Apparently this Dr. Schoolcraft is a wizard. I don't know.
Yeah. Everybody talks about Dr. Schoolcraft.
Yeah. Do we need to throw a Hail Mary? Like what? So we did a consult with him. We did a consult with a doctor in LA.
This is all virtual?
This is all virtual. Yeah. And then COVID hit like a couple weeks later. And the lady that I spoke with in LA did not have the same advice as my doctor here and Dr. Schoolcraft, which was continue on the STEM protocol that you're on and just continue to play the numbers game. Like you will get genetically normal embryos. You're just going to have to like grind through the physical treatment.
Yeah.
If you can emotionally and financially handle it.
Right.
So we were like, okay, well then COVID hits and it makes our decision easy because everyone knows in the beginning of COVID, no one was traveling. And not only that, a lot of the clinics were closing down. So we got a retrieval in early in the pandemic, I want to say May. And we got super, I'm not going to say lucky either because that was a lot of fucking hard work, but
yeah, exactly.
We got 3 genetically normal embryos and then 1 low-level mosaic embryo. We did a transfer in August of 2020 and it worked. We got pregnant with our daughter Hadley, who, if anybody follows me, is more affectionately known as Hen. Which everybody asks me, why do you call her Hen? People think her name is Henley. I'm like, no, H-E-N is her initials. Hadley was Nelson.
Right.
So we had her in May of 21.
Okay.
A lot of people most frequently asked questions. I'm sure it's coming up in people's minds. Like, what did you do differently for that retrieval versus others that got you the embryos? And then what did you do differently with the transfer protocol that got success when you had had so much failure before? So to really quickly answer that, the retrieval cycle there, we were medicating me pretty heavily for retrievals 3 and 4. We were adding Clomid. I was on a really high dose of Gonal F and really high dose of Menopur. And I was convinced that my eggs were getting fried. Whether or not that's true, I don't know. But with the 5th, I always felt like as long as we're doing one little thing different, I feel like we're not defining insanity.
Right.
So with the 5th retrieval, I told my doctor, I want to go back to the exact protocol where we got 4 embryos my very first round. And so we dialed back my doses a lot, like almost cut them in half. We removed the Clomid. The only thing we added or that we kept that I didn't do my first round was we did the human growth hormone. And so that's to answer anybody's question that has that. That's what we did. We just went with lower doses of medication. And then with the transfer protocol, with my first 4 transfers, we did a medicated protocol. And then with Hadley, we did a modified natural cycle with an ERA in both cases. Like I just wanted to do all the testing under the sun to make sure my implantation window was pinpointed to the extent that it could be. And so that's what I did differently with her and added a bunch of immune protocol stuff. I never have seen a reproductive immunologist because, again, it was in the middle of COVID. I wasn't going to travel to go do that. So we just treated my body like I had issues. So I was on a host of steroids. I did not do interlipid infusions. But anyway, I don't know if it was just the culmination of all of that or if it was just our time or what.
Yeah.
But we had Hadley.
Right. Okay. So much to unpack with that. So before we move on, first of all, I remember like while you were, we were talking pretty much every day while you were going through it. I remember you calling me texting me to tell me that you were pregnant with Hadley. And it was literally like heartbursting news. Like after knowing everything that you had been through, tell me how you guys felt when you found out that you were pregnant.
Well, I was always, up until her, an early tester. And with her, I tried to do so much more. I tried to trust in the process. I tried to manifest all the positivity. I was really big into doing meditation. I did Reiki before the transfer. Like I was just trying to be more zen about it and like maybe recognize, hey, I don't have control. And so testing early or relinquishing testing early, relinquishing that control. Maybe was me doing that. But anyway, so what we did was we had our beta 9 days past transfer, and we went to the lab to do the blood work. And then we came back to the house and we tested, because I was like, all right, I'm at least going to hold out till beta day. However, I am going to test, because there's just something about, and there's no right or wrong way to do any of this, as we all know, but there's something for me personally about being called with that big of news that just makes me more anxious than just knowing myself.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense.
We tested and we both sat on the bed, and then we walked in there after the timer went off, and we were both looking at it, and Will was like, "That's a line." And we got so excited. We're like jumping up and down and crying and screaming. And of course I used the shittiest test under the sun. It was like one of the CVS brand, like terrible. And I mean, we could barely see it. And so then I bought a digital clear one, and it popped up pregnant. And so,
oh my God, it's the
we were
best.
very excited. We got the call later that day, but yeah, we were very, very excited. And I feel like maybe we stayed excited for 24 hours.
I was just going to say, so how soon before the anxiety sets in? Because we talk about this all the time.
Yeah.
Pregnancy after loss and infertility is fucking, you're robbed of so much. You're constantly waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're constantly, all the things. So tell me about that for you guys. So 24 hours later, you're like, oh shit. Okay.
I mean, I think, of course, now you have to remember too, another layer of this for me is that I'm very public with my journey. And that all started, I started my account, which used to be Fab Fertility. Now it's Fab IVF Mama. I started it after the miscarriage because I was so alone and so isolated.
Right.
And it was really my way of word vomiting how I was feeling and processing grief is how my account started. So I had so many people cheering me on, and so many people knew it was my beta day. And I had tested at like 8 a.m. and I knew it had worked, but they didn't call me with my results till like 5 p.m. So I remember everybody was blowing me up like, oh my God, thinking the worst, but I didn't want to post anything until I knew for sure. Because who knows, that stupid test could have been faulty. I don't know. So
exactly.
Finally I post, and it was just like, I think what helped me ride the high for 24 hours was like everybody's just outpouring of joy and love for us.
Right.
And then, the next day I was just like, well, shit. And in my mind, initially, I was like, well, if we can get through 7 weeks, which was when we miscarried our second transfer, I'll feel better.
Right.
And anybody listening that's been pregnant after treatment knows, no, you don't.
Right.
I mean, maybe a little bit, but then you go to the next milestone.
Exactly.
Like, I can't wait till I graduate from the clinic. Oh, and then like it's the NIPT scan, and then it's this, and then it's this.
Right. That bar is always changing and shifting, and the like benchmarks are always changing too. Yeah. So it's like you never fully feel good about things.
Well, yeah, and then we'll get into this, but then my recent experience,
right?
It's like, well, I can't even trust that, like those milestones anymore.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I definitely want to get into all that. But before we go down that road, tell me one thing that I've always been really, really impressed by with you. Again, we talk about this all the time with our members, is you weren't standing for just being told, do this and this and this. You were very proactive. You were such a big advocate for not only like changing clinics like you did, but asking to have certain tests done. Can you tell me a little bit about that piece for you and why that was so important and how you had the balls to do that, frankly?
Yeah, I feel like it all comes down to being a control freak and all comes down to knowing that I cannot live in regret or live in knowing there is something I could have done that I didn't that could have changed an outcome, which in a lot of cases works to my advantage, but in some cases to my detriment because it causes a lot of anxiety. But for example, after my third retrieval had failed, I remember, just grasping at straws, reaching out to everybody, like what could possibly be causing us to not get any normal embryos? Like I've had a hysteroscopy, I've had an HSG, I've had an ERA, I've done, we've tried human growth hormone, I'm doing all the supplements, I'm doing all the things, like what the hell? And I then convinced myself from either listening to a podcast episode or talking to somebody on Instagram or whatever, that maybe I had silent endometriosis and that was the reason why my egg quality was shit and we couldn't get embryos, whatever. Never had I been told my egg quality was crappy, by the way. I was just like, what could possibly be the reason? So I told my doctor, I want a elective laparoscopy. He was like, what?
That's a first, probably.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I'm just convinced that this happened to my friend so-and-so, and she got her silent endo removed and then immediately got pregnant, and maybe that's it with me. Like, there's just no other explanation. And so, that's just an example of me self-educating, coming up with potential causes, and then going to my medical team and insisting on something. And Ali and I talk about this all the time, is even, it might sound crazy, and to my doctor was probably like, what the hell? But he's look, a laparoscopy is not going to hurt her, I guess. So if that's what she needs to put her mind at ease, then okay. But I always think it's important to have a doctor that respects that you do your own research and also is willing to listen to you and willing to tweak your treatment if it does make medical sense and it's not going to hurt you. So that was one example.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt so financially and emotionally invested.
Yeah.
That I was like, if I don't get my way or if I don't feel heard, I am going to have a really hard time spending all this money and like being so emotionally attached to this process if I don't feel heard, if I don't have any sort of control over my treatment.
Yeah. Oh, and it's also like you've come this far, and why not just go that little extra bit more? Because if that's the one thing that made the difference, then you'd fucking regret it, like you said, and you never want to have any regrets.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's very hard. It's hard to, in some instances, be patient and do the extra testing to get the extra answers because we just want to fast track treatment. And it's so time consuming. And it's not like, oh, you can just try next month, like most people that are fortunate enough to have sex babies.
Right. Free babies.
A lot of times having a test or procedure done sets you back 2, 3, 4 months in some instances.
Right.
So I remember one time I had an ERA done, an endometrial receptivity assay, for those that are wondering what that stands for, before a transfer. And it came back inconclusive because my doctor, I guess, didn't biopsy enough tissue. And so I remember having a thought in that moment, like, let's just go forward with the transfer. Like he said that I'm probably receptive because I'm doing a modified natural cycle. I don't want to waste any more time. But then that little voice started creeping in, like, but what if it's not? You would have ruined your chances because you weren't patient. And I'm glad I did, because I did get results back that were not receptive. And that was right before I got pregnant with Hadley. So,
right. Exactly. I mean, I think it's just really important in stressing again that, we say this on every fertility rally call basically, but if you don't feel like you're being a team player or your doctor's being like a teammate with you, or they're not listening to you, it doesn't have to be that way. And I think that, again, you're just such a good example of, advocating and asking for things and not settling for less than you deserve. And I think I didn't know that. I was just like, I'll do whatever the doctor says,
Well, and the worst they can say is no, right?
Right.
And if they say no, that's a good thing, because they're likely going to come at you with evidence that's going to make you feel good about not doing it.
Right.
And you're going to feel more resolute in your treatment process and the path you're on.
Yeah.
Versus having these questions, not bringing them up because it feels uncomfortable. Like we always say this too, and like I'm kind of getting annoyed with myself from saying it, but like they work for us.
It's true.
They might be more educated than we are in some regards, in science specifically and reproductive medicine, but they do work for us, and we're paying them
a shit ton
freaking money.
Yeah.
So exactly. You might as well ask your question.
Totally. Okay. So let's go back to, so you had Hadley, and how old is Hadley right now?
Hadley it's the 12th of December.
Yep.
She turned 19 months today.
Oh my God. She is the cutest. It's the little ponytail that sticks up on top of her head for me. I love that.
It's the little Pebbles fountain ponytail.
She's the best. Okay. So then what happened after that? Like, how long after you had her did you guys, I know you've always talked about you wanted more than one kid or multiple kids. Did you guys have a plan in mind?
We did, of course. Like the second I got pregnant with Hadley, I was like, okay, so she's going to be due in May. And so that means I'll have, if I have, and of course, I just knew I was going to have a vaginal birth and it was just going to be beautiful. And okay, then I know I have to wait a year. And then, so that means May of 2022, I can get pregnant or try again, how you start going. I did a post about this, about how the second you have a transfer scheduled, like you start doing all the crazy math and looking up the birthstones and the horoscope sign and all this shit. So like for Will and I, at least for me, Will just kind of is along for the ride, which is nice, but I want to have them like bam, bam, bam. And I would love to have 3 children if we're given that opportunity. But my thought process behind doing it as quickly as possible is if we run out of embryos, I want to have the opportunity to make more while I am as young as possible. Right. Because it's proven to take a very long time for us to get embryos. So anyway, that was kind of my thinking behind it all. And so we ended up having to go into a C-section with her. I had a failed induction and it was not an emergency C-section. It was a very chill and not a rush or anything. But I was pissed because, I had a laminated birth plan, damn it. And
absolutely. Anytime you laminate the plan, you know that it's going to not be the road you go down, right?
I mean, there was like a C-section section on the back.
Of course.
Just in case. But anyway, so yeah.
A C-section section.
Yeah. C-section section. So that changed timing immediately. And because with the C-section, they recommend you wait some doctors, my doctor specifically, recommended 18 months, not 12.
Damn, and that's a big difference.
Yeah. And I bartered with him. So he was like, okay, 16 is fine.
As one does.
Yeah. So we transferred another one of our normal embryos September of this year. So just a few months ago, 3 months ago, 2 months ago, and used the same protocol as we did with Hadley. I redid my ERA because again, I don't want to leave any box unchecked because I had read in one article on the vast internet that after a birth, your receptivity can change in your uterus. So I was like, I'm going to redo the ERA. Results came back the same, by the way. And
are you glad you did it though?
I am. Yeah. I am. Yeah. So anyway, transferred September and it worked. And we were over the moon. Like that's the first time in this entire journey where I was just like, no way we're that lucky. Because every other thing that ever happened was just like, well, of course this happened this way. It's like the worst possible case scenario.
Right. You're always used to getting the bad news.
Yeah. And so we were super just grateful and kind of shocked, to be honest. And I will say, experiencing pregnancy and the whole process, honestly, the transfer process leading up to it, everything so different. Number one, not in a pandemic. And number two, when you have a toddler, right? Because I didn't really have time to spiral because I'm working basically 2 full-time jobs and raising a human.
Right. Exactly.
And so in that regard, it was kind of nice because I wasn't as anxious during you can't even really call it a 2-week wait, a 9-day wait after the transfer. And then early in the pregnancy, I can't say that I was as anxious, right? Because I was so busy.
Yeah. You know what I was thinking about the other day? So would this be considered secondary infertility for you? Like going through it again or no?
I don't know. I don't know where those definitions fall.
Yeah.
I think once I end up finishing this part of the story, yeah, probably.
Okay.
But I don't know. Cause I mean, we definitely had primary infertility.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, it's just all fucking infertility.
I mean, yeah. I was just curious because I'm like, I guess technically when you have one already and then you're going through it again, but I don't feel like it's not black and white like that.
No, it's not. I don't think so. And I feel like,
and it doesn't matter. Like who fucking cares what the label is? It just popped into my head and I was just curious what you thought about it.
I was wondering the same thing as well. Cause actually I was wondering it because when I did a post about what ends up happening with this pregnancy, I wanted to hashtag secondary infertility, but then I was like, but is it?
Right. Yeah. And then you're like, oh God, I don't want to like piss anybody off or trigger anybody or get the wrath of DMs, you know?
Yeah. I will say that what I did do that was very strange with this pregnancy that I didn't do with Hadley was I was obsessing over the betas.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe it's just because, again, like I've learned so much since then. And also the world's opened back up and there's more resources at our fingertips. We feel more comfortable going into doctor's offices, et cetera. But I did 3 betas on my own.
Yeah. So tell people what that looks like. What does that mean?
Okay. So I went in 9 days past transfer for my beta with this pregnancy. It came back at a 92. I think that's where I started spiraling or no, maybe it came back like in the 80s or something. And I started spiraling because Hadley's was higher. And so I was like, of course, comparing, which we tell people never to do as I say, not as I do. Okay. But like, don't cycle compare, don't pregnancy compare, like even to your own pregnancies and cycles. Cause it's all just a shit show. It's just, crapshoot, I should say.
This episode is sponsored by Armoire. If you guys are anything like me, you don't even know how to get dressed anymore. Like, what are normal clothes and what am I supposed to wear when I go out into the world? I look in my closet and it's full, but I literally have nothing to wear. Enter Armoire. Armoire allows you to rent high-end designer clothing for every occasion. Whether you're heading to a holiday party, a work event, or need a gown for like a fancy function, like a wedding or something, you can be the best dressed person in the room, honestly. And you can do it without ever having to brave a fitting room. Here's what happened recently when I signed up for Armoire. I took a style quiz online, and based on my preferences, they offered clothing suggestions. So I could either go with their suggestions or I could search for specific things on my own. I picked 6 things, and I got my case just a few days later in the mail, and I had all 6 things in it: a floral dress, a blazer, a fun sequin top, some leather pants, a sweater, and a sparkly black tie or wedding dress. It was so fun trying it all on in my own room with my own lighting, and I'm actually wearing the dress tomorrow when I go to a dinner party. Another awesome thing about Armoire is that it's women-funded and women-led, and you guys know how much that means to me. So the coolest part is right now, Infertile AF listeners can give Armoire a try and get up to 50% off their first month. That's up to $125 off. All you have to do is go to armoire.style/infertileaf. So that's spelled ARMOIRE.style/infertileaf, and you get up to 50% off your first month. Try Armoire today, and you never have to worry about what to wear again. Again, it's armoire.style/infertileaf for up to 50% off. Thanks, Armoire.
From 3 to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, Buffalo Wild Wings Happy Hour has beer, cocktails, and bar food for $3 to $6. It's the perfect way to offset a long day. Text that hilarious joke about your boss to your boss. What? No. Try a $4 Coors Light Tall. Set your morning alarm for 6 p.m. That calls for $5 strawberry margaritas. So if you ask your phone why you're still single and... Seriously? Head to Buffalo Wild Wings Happy Hour from 3 to 6. At participating locations, taxes and fees apply. Dine in only. Drink responsibly. Offers vary by location. Void where prohibited.
This holiday, whether you're making a Kroger Simple Truth turkey for 40 or a Murray's Baked Brie for 2, Kroger has fast, fresh delivery and free pickup, so you can make holiday meals that bring you all together to create memories that last. Kroger, fresh for everyone. Free pickup on orders of $35 or more. Restrictions may apply.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
So anyway, I was like, I wonder. And then I wait, the 48 hours later, it had doubled. So it was looking good. But I have very, very little symptoms when I'm early pregnant, like never did with the first pregnancy, didn't with Hadley, didn't with this one. And so that makes me uneasy. And so how my clinic does it is they do the first one, then they wait 48 hours later, and then they wait a whole week.
Mm-hmm.
And my clinic doesn't see you until 7 weeks for a scan.
Oh my God. So nerve-wracking.
Yeah. And so a lot of people get betas every 48 hours for a while. They go in at 5 weeks. They go in at 6 weeks. Like there's more hand holding.
Mm-hmm.
And my clinic is not that way. So I just remember being like, I need something. Like I need something to put my mind at ease.
Yep.
So I went to it was a Quest Diagnostics.
Mm-hmm.
I Googled get a beta test, buy your own beta test or something like that. And found this website where you could buy a $50 beta test.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just went to a Quest Diagnostics, which they're everywhere, just like a CPO.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get the results that day or the next day.
Mm-hmm. So did they ship you the test, or they ship it to Quest?
No.
Or
No, they route it through a doctor who puts in the order.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I love that you went rogue like that.
Yeah.
And
I was I need to know.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
So it was just that managing that early pregnancy anxiety that we touched on before, and trying to hold on to some sort of control. So all of that was fine. I did that 2 or 3 times. I did have a little bit of spotting, right before, a few days before I was scheduled for my first scan with my IVF doctor. And I got to go in a few days early. We saw the heartbeat. Mm-hmm. So that was a huge relief. Then we went in the next week. Everything was looking great. And I think we might have gone in one more time before we graduated. And then I went and saw my OB, and everything was great, and everything was progressing fine. My progesterone levels, the other stressful thing, I guess, is, and same with Hadley, my progesterone levels always come back low. Mm-hmm. On the modified natural, you're not doing progesterone and oil shots. Usually you're doing suppositories. So you're getting a much lower dose, because the whole idea behind that protocol is that your body's making its own hormones, and they just need a little bit of assistance. But my progesterone's historically notoriously low. And so we had to double my dose at some point. And I just remember being really anxious about that. And then around 10, 11, 12 weeks is when the placenta, 10 weeks takes over. And so I was finally pulled off all my meds from my fertility doctor. So I got to stop with the suppositories, stop with the prednisone.
Did that feel nerve-wracking to be off of everything?
It did. But, at the same time, while my fertility doctor is pulling me off, I'm then messaging my OB in the portal, is it okay that I'm pulled off here in my levels? And he's like, yes. So I'm getting 2 doctors telling me it's okay. And so I'm like, Blair, that has to be good enough. So it felt very good. It always feels good to get off the prednisone, because it makes you so hungry, so puffy. Your sleep shitty.
Yeah.
I lost 10 pounds when I got off the prednisone. It was so nice.
Oh my God. And I know you were having such a hard time sleeping. I felt so bad for you.
Yeah. So it just sucks. So then we scheduled our 12-week, actually we went in at 13 weeks in a couple days, but it's the typical 12-week NIPT scan where they're measuring the baby's fluid in the back of the neck. They look at the nose bone, which are big indicators for Down syndrome, et cetera. Because while the genetic testing on the embryos is 98.2, I think, is the stat percent accurate, the NIPT test is 99% accurate. So even my fertility doctor was like, I know there's just barely a bit of a statistical difference, but we still encourage all of our IVF patients to get that testing done, whatever. It's also the test that reconfirms the gender, right?
And did you know the gender at this point?
Yes. So we knew Hadley was our only day 5 embryo. And so we knew the gender breakdown. We had 2 girls and 2 boys. Our only day 5 was a girl. And then our 2 day 6 normals are boys. And then our mosaic is a girl. So what our transfer with Hadley, when they told us they were transferring the day 5, we were like, okay, so we know it's a girl.
Right.
And then really all the there was really no surprise because of how it broke down. But we certainly didn't choose. Like every time we're like, tell the embryologist to pick the best one. But just because of the way it broke down and the day of development that they were, we knew. So yeah, we knew this was a boy. And so we go into our NIPT scan, I don't know, like 2 or 3 weeks ago at this point. It was the end of November.
Did you think anything of it? Were you nervous, or was it just like, here's another test? Everything's good so far, right?
No, because here's another crazy thing that I do is I use the Doppler every day.
Right.
Like I could I should do a video on YouTube of how to find a baby's heartbeat at 9 weeks because I'm that insane. But I had been finding his heartbeat every single day since we graduated from the fertility clinic.
Right.
So to me, that was the barometer that everything was healthy.
Yeah.
So I found his heartbeat that morning and we went into the scan, and the doctor, how the scans work with my doctor, if they're like big scans like that, like the fetal echo or this or the anatomy scan, is he partners with a sonographer company, whatever you want to call it. He third parties out the sonographer services, but they do it in clinic. They do the images and then we go meet with him. If it's just a scan, he'll do just the over the belly, like quick check kind of thing.
Right.
So this was with a sonographer, and masks are not required in my clinic anymore. Okay. I walk in, I have a mask on because I had felt kind of under the weather, even though I had tested negative for everything. And then I realized that they weren't wearing masks. So we walked into the room and I took mine off, and she was like, if you're sick, I'm going to need you to put that on because I can't afford to miss work. And I was like, oh, great. This scan's off to a really nice start.
Yeah.
So I put it on and I was just like, geez, lady, like, do you not know that every woman that comes and lays down here for you is so excited and nervous. And like, that's how you're going to start this. Like,
exactly.
Fuck you.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I lay back and she starts doing, taking the images and stuff. And to be honest, I like looking back, things did not look normal from the beginning.
Like beginning of that scan or beginning of the pregnancy? Beginning
of that scan.
Got it. Okay.
I had gone back in my phone and looked at what the images of Hadley looked like at that scan. And you could very quickly and easily tell there was a perfect baby profile, and so I had gone back to look at them like 2 or 3 days prior to the appointment because I was like, oh, like, look, this is what the baby's going to look like. It's so crazy that you can see this and that already, blah, blah, blah. But, I also was like, well, maybe she's just, in those scans, they take so many images, like they take images of your ovaries, your cervix, the placenta, like, so it's not like they're just focused on the baby. And so at the very beginning, I was like, okay, whatever. And she even like made mention, like, here's the head, here's his arms are bent or whatever. And then she got really quiet, and obviously we didn't have a good rapport going in because of the mask comment. So I wasn't going to try to small talk with her. And then all of a sudden she was like, I'll be right back.
Are you with Will? Is he there?
Yeah, Will was with me.
Okay.
And like you and I have been through enough just on our own journeys, but also listening to all of our rally members tell stories like this, like that's not good.
That's never good.
That's never good. And I just looked at Will and I just kept saying, I can't handle bad news. I can't handle bad news. Like, what is wrong? He goes, Blair, let's just wait for the doctor. I'm like, there's something wrong.
Oh my God.
I was like, that scan didn't look normal. And, he was like, we don't know anything yet. I'm like, I just don't know what I'm going to do if there's something wrong. And she came back in and she was like, oh, and before she left the first time, I was like, is everything okay? And she just repeated, I'll be right back.
Oh God.
And then she comes back in and she's like, I'm going to move you into this other room to talk with your doctor. And I was like, so just vulnerable, laying there with jelly all over me, like my pants down, like my abdomen exposed. And then she just walks back in, I'm going to move you to this other room. And I was like, is everything okay? She's like, I can't tell you, which is true.
Right. But still, fuck.
And so I was just like, okay, so obviously not. I was thinking that in my brain. And then I said to her, I was like, maybe you can't, like a little empathy would be nice.
Yeah, good. I'm so glad you said that, fucking bitch.
And she was just like, I just can't say anything. And then she just like walked us to the room. Anyway, So we go sit in this exam room where he also kind of does debriefs for everything. And I was sitting in the chair next to Will, and the nurse comes in, and bless her, like, I cannot believe I didn't go off on her, but she was like, okay, we're going to take your blood pressure.
Oh, God.
And I was like, I don't really think that now is a good time.
No.
But she did it anyway. And then she said, have you and your husband done karyotype screening? So clearly there's something wrong. Again, I'd rather hear it from my doctor than like y'all alluding to it.
Right.
And pussyfooting around it. And I was like, yes, we have done karyotyping screening to go through IVF. That is a requirement. She's like, oh, okay, we just didn't see it in your file. I was like, well, we did it back in 2018. And she's just like, okay. And so anyway, then he comes in, and we love our doctor. We're obsessed with him. He's so awesome. And, you know, we could just tell in his face. And he goes, you can take your fucking mask off. I don't care. So we took our masks off, and he took his off, and he was just like, I'm really sorry. I don't know what I can say. Like, I really wish I had better news. But he goes, I looked at the scan very briefly, and from what I can tell, there's some severe developmental abnormalities in the abdominal cavity. It's like the abdominal cavity is distended. It looks like part of it's attached to the uterine wall, and it looks like some of the organs are outside of the stomach. And he was like, and because of that, we couldn't get images of everything. So it's hard to say like comprehensively everything that's wrong.
Yeah.
And he said, so what I want you to do is I'm going to give you a referral to a maternal fetal medicine specialist, basically in layman's terms, high risk doctor, and get you in as soon as we can. And he's like, and I said, okay. So I'm holding back all my emotion at this point, because we all know, listening to this, like, your time with your doctor is so short that I'm like, okay, Blair, suppress your emotions and get as much information as you can. And then you can emotions later. So I was like, okay, so best case scenario is what? And he said, best case scenario is that it is just the abdominal wall, because I forget what it starts with, an O, but it's essentially when some of the organs grow outside of the stomach, and when you deliver, it's a surgery that puts everything back in. Okay. And there's like a 90% survival rate on that particular surgery if that's the isolated problem. Okay. He was like, that's best case scenario. And I'm like, well, that sounds fucking shitty. Yeah. You know, and he's like, worst case scenario, there's multiple things wrong, and it's like a fatal diagnosis to the baby. Oh my God. And so I was like, okay, will the MFM be able to tell us definitively? And he said, I think so. But these babies at this point are so small. I think at the size of a lemon at this point is, I'm saying that anecdotally from what I know. And he's like, so sometimes to really give a good diagnosis, we have to wait until they're older so we can get images of everything. So I'm just like, really? Okay.
So how many weeks were you at the scan, Blair? 13?
I was a little over 13, like 13 and a half almost. And so anyway,
oh my God, my heart just sunk again, you know, like, I don't know how you're so strong. Like, I can't imagine being in that room and like being able to ask these like intelligent questions, you know?
Well, I mean, so thank you. But he leaves, and he's like, take as much time as you need. And I think Will and I were just stunned and in disbelief. And it's like, you think if you have a genetically normal embryo, that's such a huge battle, then you get pregnant with it. That's another huge battle. And you kind of think like, those are the only two hurdles I need to jump here. And then I was just like, I don't even remember exactly what we said, but it was just like, what the fuck? Why is this happening to us? What did we do? Is it something I did? Is it something like with my uterus? Is it something I ate? Is it something in the environment? Like, who knows? Like, you start just spiraling, right? And
Totally.
so, I don't know, we probably sat in there for 5 minutes. I cried a little, but I was just in shock and mad. And I think Will was processing, obviously terrified of how this was going to affect me. And so we walked out, and I just remember everybody staring at us like in pity, which is fucking terrible.
Yeah.
And then we walk out, and Will's like, do you want me? Because we had gone in separate cars because we planned like everything's going to be great and we're just going to go to work afterwards. So we're
Right.
separate cars. And so he was like, do you want me to drive you home and we can come get your car later? And I just remember saying something like, I don't want to come back to this fucking place. So no, I'm going to drive my car home. So I drove the car home, like cried the whole way home. We got home and we literally just sat on the couch for 3 hours in a mix of silence and just crying and like, what did we do to deserve this? Like conversation. And then we started Googling this, what I can't remember the diagnosis that he had mentioned. Start Googling that, and it's not good. And then you start thinking to yourself, then all the thoughts of this is going to be a hard decision start coming in. Like, okay, what if it is best case scenario? Like, we were Googling images of babies that had this surgery and it's terrifying looking.
Yeah.
And then it's like, well, do you want to have a baby that has a scar up its entire body? Like, that doesn't even have 100% chance of survival, and then has like basically a sure like lifetime full of health issues because your organs didn't develop inside your abdominal cavity.
Right.
Like digestive issues their whole life. Like, you know what I mean? It's just like, shit, like that sounds awful.
Right. Because you're like, is that even fair to the baby? You know, like you
Right.
start thinking about that. I looked it up. It's called phalloceal.
Yes, that's exactly it.
Yeah.
And so then we start thinking, and then these like dark thoughts start coming in like, well, at least if there's more complications than that, then we're not having to deal with a potential survival chance.
Yeah.
And that makes decisions easier.
Right. Still so dark.
It's so dark. It's like you go the night before from like touching the belly, saying good night, baby, like to then the next day hoping that something is terribly wrong. Like, it's just so awful. And
Such a mind fuck.
Yeah. And so then we were like, okay, we can't sit on this couch any longer. We have to eat something. So we like canceled the rest of our day, obviously. And that's the other thing is you have to clue at least a couple people at work. Like, well, y'all knew I had a doctor's appointment this morning. Well, things went terribly south and I'm not coming in. And so we went and got a smoothie because like literally I was like, I'm just going to drink calories. There's no way I can eat anything right now.
Right.
And then we went and walked around the lake here in Austin and just talked about everything. And while we were getting the smoothie, my doctor called and he was like, I looked at it in more depth and I've never seen it before in my career, but I think your baby has limb body wall complex.
Yeah.
And I was like, what? Had to have him repeat it several times. And he said, and I ran it by one of my colleagues and they agree. But I want it confirmed by the MFM because that is what they specialize in as high risk pregnancies, abnormalities, etc. But that is what I think it is.
Did he explain it to you at all?
Yeah, he was just like essentially it's what it sounds like the limb and body are like some part of the limbs and the body are attaching to the abdomen or the uterine wall and they're deformed and they're not developing properly. It's like, you know, at some point around week 10 or, you know, between weeks 9, 10, 11, I think the organs do develop outside of the body, but then they all come in through the umbilical cord and the stomach shuts up. But it just didn't happen. The coming back in and the shutting didn't happen. So, you know, and he said, like, and that is fatal, like for the baby, like that's limb body wall complex. First of all, the chances of that happening are 1 in 3 million.
Oh my God.
And
I thought it was 1 in 100,000. That's
no,
insane.
it's 0.3 in 100,000. So they might as well just say 3 in a million.
Right.
And there's like no survival. And there's also no explanation for why it happens. Like it is completely random. It is a cell misfire between the baby's brain and the body development.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with my anatomy or anything I ate or drank or whatever.
And
so,
like you said, it was a tested embryo. So it's not a chromosomal thing, right?
Right. It's not like limb body wall complex is not genetic. It's not chromosomal, whatever, however you want to categorize it. So, in that moment, I had the tiniest bit of relief because I was like, well, that takes the decision off the table of, do we want to give this baby a fighting chance or not? Because it doesn't have one,
Yeah.
And so in that regard, it was a little bit of a relief, as fucked up as that sounds.
No, that makes so much sense.
And so anyway, we just kind of went on about our day, like did the walk, we did a lot of Googling, and do not Google image limb body wall complex. You will be traumatized. So then we just had to wait 3 days until our scan with the MFM. MFM confirmed the diagnosis.
I hate that you had to wait 3 days for that.
Oh, I know. It's just like, that's the earliest I could get seen. And just, that's crazy. And so she confirmed the diagnosis. They were able to take a lot more images. She showed, both legs are deformed. The bladder is not draining amniotic fluid. It's like really large. The liver's outside of the body. The stomach's like, all the stomach is outside of the abdominal cavity. They thought even the heart could be growing outside of the body. And so there's just so much wrong. It was hard to watch.
Yeah.
Like they could barely even get like a semblance of a profile of the head. And so it was just really, really awful. And so where we're at today is I'm 15 weeks and 2 days pregnant. And it just kind of boils down to, there's 3 options I have. And we've been back to the MFM again since that first scan. And option 1 is that the baby's heart stops beating. And I'm in Texas for anybody that's listening. And so because of the overturn of Roe v. Wade and what Texas decided to do with that decision is that as long as there's cardiac activity, you cannot terminate in Texas. Even if you are told by medical professionals that your baby will not live, as long as its heart is beating, you cannot terminate.
Okay. So how do you feel personally about that? How does that make you feel?
I think it's fucked up.
Yeah.
And I think it's easy for people to have a political opinion about this if they're removed from it happening to anybody.
Yeah.
The second it becomes personal to you or somebody else, like I think your opinion changes because then empathy is part of the equation. But like for me, I don't talk about politics on my page because I'm here for infertility support and education and to share my life through that lens. But like, I am a conservative person. I grew up in West Texas. Like I am mainly fiscally, but like it not socially as much. So it's hard for me that like this becoming more personal because a lot of the people that I voted for in the past made policy that like, I don't agree with and have it for years.
Right.
So like, that's just kind of a mind fuck in and of itself, but like, I don't agree with it.
Yeah.
I think I think the law could be written to protect cases like these while still, I don't know. I think there's different ways that it could be written, but I don't think the way that it's written now in Texas specifically is fair. I don't think that you should force a mother to carry a baby with a death sentence.
Yeah.
Because the most painful thing for me has been looking and feeling more pregnant with a baby that I know I'm never going to bring home.
Yeah.
And that has been the hardest part. So my one option is that baby's heart stops beating.
Mm-hmm.
And when it does, when it, if and when, it's a matter of when, right? Not if.
Yeah. Is there like a time frame that needs to happen by? Okay.
To have a termination in Texas?
If the heart stopped beating. Yeah.
I don't know, actually. I don't know if all the states are different. And again, like I know there's a lot of people or a lot of resources in the infertility space trying to pull together a state-by-state explanation of this overturn and how it affects people.
Mm-hmm.
I have yet to find a good one. So if anyone listening wants to DM me and tell me, that'd be great.
Yeah.
But let's say the baby's heart stops beating this week and I go into my next scan on Friday, then I can do the procedure here.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one option is baby's heart stops beating. I'm able to terminate for medical reasons, which there's an acronym for that, of course, TFMR.
Mm-hmm.
I can do it here in Texas. Or I also, on top of all this shit, have placenta previa, which Ali, you had, right?
I had it. Yep.
Which can mean a whole host of things later on in the pregnancy. It can cause you to hemorrhage. It isn't safe to have a natural birth in most instances. Natural vaginal birth because of where the placenta is located and the risk of hemorrhaging, etc. So with that issue, the MFM told me at any time I could start hemorrhaging.
Oh my God.
At which case, if I am hemorrhaging and losing a lot of blood with a baby with this diagnosis, they could likely make the determination in the hospital that they could terminate because at that point it would be life-threatening to me.
Right.
Okay. So then there's that.
God.
Or I can travel to a state where it's legal to do the termination. So those are the three options on the table. Then if I do have the termination, like there's just all these other things you don't even think about don't even know exist until you're in this situation. Within the terminating for medical reasons world, you can either be induced and actually deliver the baby, or you can have a surgical termination. So then you have to make that decision if that's the route you go.
Right.
And then you have to decide, do I want to see and hold my little tiny child that is deformed? And is that the last memory I want? Or would I rather just be knocked out and not have memory of it at all?
Oh my God.
And then beyond that, it's like, do you want a little footprint? Do you want the ashes? There's just so many fucked up things that that get piled on in a very short amount of time when you're in this situation.
Yeah.
And so those are just all the things I've been dealing with over the past 3 weeks and trust me, people on here think that I'm strong or whatever. Thank you. But I basically spent an entire week like crying. I don't think I have any tears left.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I know. And I mean, the outpouring of community and how many literally tens of thousands of people who love you, just in this infertility community alone has been, I'm sure, made it feel a little bit better. But my fucking God, this is complete hell that you're going through right now because it's still not over. No, it's not over. And it's, I've been in this situation before where when I had the miscarriage, we went in at like 6 weeks, I think, and there was no longer a heartbeat. And I had to wait a week to take the pills at home. Right. Because we went on a trip for our 1-year anniversary and to celebrate our birthdays to Europe. And that's when I had just found out I was pregnant, got cleared to travel. Baby died at some point when we were on our trip, came home, went to an appointment the next day. And then because I had taken off so much work for the trip, I didn't want to have
take the pills or do a surgical procedure and take off more work. So I had to like walk around with a dead baby.
Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
week.
You said that in the first episode
Yeah.
that we recorded, and that broke my heart again to hear that, because I've
And
forgotten that little detail, but
well,
or not
and this
detail, but detail.
this is very similar,
Yeah.
except the baby isn't dead. Its heart is still beating, and that's even more heartbreaking.
Right. Your stories when you talked about going to Target, do you mind sharing that? Because that broke my heart too. But it was such a real thing, and I'm so glad
like
that you.
shopping?
Yeah. Can you tell people that might not have seen that?
So I was talking on my Instagram stories the other day, I think it was the week after it happened, that I was going to Target, number one, to get my daughter out of the house and do an activity that required nothing from me, but to amuse her, which is Target. And which is
she's a girl
pathetic.
after our own hearts.
Yeah. I mean, pathetic parenting move, but like just in survival.
No, that is a normal parenting move, please.
And, but really the main objective of that trip was to find oversized sweaters to wear with my leggings to not show my bump, because I definitely look pregnant. Like there's no mistaking it at all anymore. And I don't want questions. And I'm not only hiding it from other people, I'm almost hiding it from myself at this point. Like I immediately disconnected. I don't touch my stomach. I don't look at it. I try not to look at it. It's depressing to me. But at the same time that I'm like, well, am I being a bad mom to this baby by not nurturing it while it's still in there? I mean, it's just, you can't even imagine all the things that go through your mind.
Of course.
So yeah, I mean, every single day I've worn either like a baggy dress or my workout leggings and a loose top, and like tucked it in at the top, like the half tuck, to kind of like hide what's happening. And I feel like black like hides things, so they're by black leggings, and it's just fucking depressing.
Yeah.
It's bad. And
I'm so incredibly sorry that this is happening to you guys. How's Will doing?
He's more of he's very good in a crisis. Like both of his parents have passed away. So he's dealt with that. He's obviously all this IVF trauma we've gone through. He's well versed at trauma, let's just say that. And for him, like he kind of goes into fix it mode and deals with his emotions later. Whereas I'm the opposite. Like I'm front load with the emotions and try to process as quickly as I can so I can move on, or not move on, but move through it, I should say.
Yeah.
So immediately, like he was the one Googling these various diagnoses, like trying to figure out stuff. He immediately booked an appointment with our therapist for us to go to see our therapist. Like took care of as much around the house as he could.
Yeah.
And I was met with all this support, right? Like you alluded to, from our community, which I'm just so thankful for. And honestly, like I said in my first post, like y'all, this community has kept me sane and like kept me afloat. All these, like, that's a huge part of it. I'm not even kidding or exaggerating. He told his friend, he's more private than me, obviously. He's not blasting our personal story on the internet. But he has support from his immediate, friends, family, which is how he prefers it, a more intimate support system, but also very much appreciates all the flowers and sweet messages and everything from everybody else too. Like he just like, wow, like this community. And he even said, he was like, Blair, you have all your Rally family, you have everyone in the infertility community is supporting you right now. And so he values it in the sense that he knows I need it. Right.
Yeah.
But
he's such a great guy.
He's okay.
Yeah. And then before we wrap, have you connected with anybody else who has gone through this? I know it's obviously so rare, but is there anybody else who's reached out or that you found who's?
I sure have. Yes. Okay. I was put in touch with, from my own podcast, Emma K. Bell. That's her handle on Instagram.
Love her.
And she also has, so she went through this almost the exact same time frame, like around 12 weeks, I think. Her baby had I forget what diagnoses, but it was something genetic actually. And she has, because from it has, and she's very open about it on her Instagram, has started TFMR Mamas, which is another handle. And she has like kind of like a very niche fertility rally space for women that have gone through terminations for medical reasons.
Yep.
So I immediately reached out to her, and she like immediately she was like, let's do a Zoom tomorrow morning.
I love it.
She's in Dubai, like so sweet. And she just answered all my questions that I had about like just processing news like this. And then Katie Huey Harrison, who is another dear friend of Fertility Rally, who we met through Instagram, put me in touch with Julie Cohen, who's very involved with a Jewish infertility group, who went through this as well, like 5 months ago. So I've been literally texting with Julie every single day. So I'm very, very lucky to immediately be connected with women who have gone through this, because they've literally been in my lifeline and answered so many questions. Like, I think putting the unknowns to bed and like getting questions answered that are just looming from people who have been through it as patients, not from doctors, has been very helpful.
Yeah. At least it takes that tiny, little bit off the table where you're like fledgling. Like, at least you have some concrete answers.
Right. And like when these dark thoughts come into my mind and these intrusive thoughts come into my mind, I can text them and they can empathize and can just tell me that I'm not insane and be like, that's totally normal, Right.
Exactly. So. Oh, well, anything else, Blair, before we wrap it up? But I also just want to say, I love you so much, and you're my sister, and, it's been heartbreaking for me to watch you guys going through this. And I just, I'm so glad that you do have such a supportive system, not only in fertility community, but your mom and dad and family and friends. And, you've got such a crew. So I'm really happy for all that, but this just fucking sucks. And
it does. And I don't know. I just want to thank you. And well, first of all, the plan was always to be on this episode, everyone.
That's right. The 200th episode. It was before you got this diagnosis. It was.
Yeah, but, and y'all just ended up getting all the drama along with it. But so thank you for having me on and asking me to be a guest on such a, milestone episode. So I'm glad to be here. And
I'm honored, honestly.
Well, thank you. And, I just want to thank anybody that's reached out to me, messaged me, checked on me, and also just supported me over the years over on my account, my show, Fertility Rally, this show, like they're all intertwined in some way. And I'm just really, really grateful to this community. And it's really is incredible, especially when you're going through dark times, how everybody does rally together, which is the whole reason why we named our business Fertility Rally. Yeah. It's the perfect description of what a bunch of really strong, but also traumatized women can do when someone else is going through something traumatic. So anyway, I just wanted to thank everybody. Thank you and then also to Ali has been incredibly respectful of my space and me grieving through all of this and carrying the weight of Fertility Rally while I figure out what the hell is going on. And
that's the least.
What's up from down.
That's the least. Well, this whole business is about family and love, right? Yeah. So it's like whatever needs to happen it's not about, you know what I mean? Like, I just want you to be okay. And so that's my concern.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you to you and you to everybody listening. And if you have any questions about what I'm going through or have any questions about advice that I might have for you on your own journey, I'm always happy to answer. Allie's always happy to answer either through Fertility Rally or through my Instagram account. I'm an open book and I love to help everybody.
Okay, guys, thanks again. And thank you so much to Blair. Love you and Will and Hen and your whole family so much. So thank you for just being in my life and for sharing your story today. I know that so many people love you and have been following your journey and are just really happy to hear, this next phase, and everybody's sending you so much love, including me. So thank you guys for listening. Please check out Fertility Rally if you need extra support. We are always here for you. We are growing. We have some big plans for 2023, so can't wait to share those with you guys. But follow us on Instagram at Fertility Rally. Follow this podcast at Infertile AF Stories on IG. Let me know if you guys need anything. Let me know if you guys have any great guest ideas. Let me know if you have a business and you want to partner up in some way. I'm here for all of it. So thank you guys so much. Thanks again to Blair. Talk to you guys soon.
Whether it's Kroger's Simple Truth Turkey or mac and cheese with Murray's English Cheddar or pie made with fresh Cosmic Crisp apples, there are many dishes we look forward to sharing during the holidays. And Kroger has all the fresh ingredients you need to turn today's holidays into tomorrow's memories. Kroger, fresh for everyone.
Choose from a great selection of digital coupons and use them up to 5 times in one transaction. Check our app for details. Kroger, fresh for everyone.